answer it more personally. For me, it's always really interesting to just see lots of Latin American art together. It's a research pool. I'm not interested in it as an art fair, to be honest. It's more going, seeing work, getting to know new artists, getting to know new galleries. So it's like a pool. I can just go and do research. That's brilliant.
You said that you haven't searched this year, but from the last year, what was the impression, and also what are the expectations every year, you know? What do you think is the flow? Because every show has a flow.
I think I always have the expectation to just see great art, but it's not only new artists I've never seen, it's also sometimes just works from artists I really like, and I haven't seen works from the 70s, so I also really like to rediscover older works and then see galleries who bring these works back and show it. So I'm very interested in the history of something, so I'm not so much like hunting for the newest. It's very often also that I like the fact that there are also historical positions.
Yeah, I was also like wanting to ask you, sometimes it's time that shows the great, who is really like the great artist. But how about for contemporary and modern art? How can you, choose which one is good, which one is not good?
I think it's all, I do believe in the fact that there's good and bad art. So, and that's just, I think, what the experience of the curator is, that just your eye teaches you. And then from a certain point on, I think that there comes the subjectivity in. But up to a certain point, it's just that usually everybody agrees. So and I think the how to learn it is just to see as much as you can. For me, I think with contemporary music, I always think it's very easy to compare, because you go and listen to something which is very new, and sometimes you just can't handle it. But the more you go, the more you also learn and you train your ear. And I think it's the same thing with art. Just that some people think it's easier, but I think you really have to get used also to contemporary art, and you have to learn to read it and to appreciate it. I think that's the profession that you will need to know. But we all know there are a lot of brilliant artists out there which haven't been discovered and have no representation, have no gallery shows. And that's part of it. I think very often the good art is happening outside of the market.
You were also participating to the panel. What was your speech about, or what were you talking about?
I was just talking a bit about the show we're opening end of September, which is Ana Mendieta, who's a Cuban artist who was kind of trained in the US because she left Cuba on, I think it was 61, when she was 12 years old, because her father turned against the government. And she left Cuba without her parents and had a quite traumatic time. But her work actually relates very much back to Latin America more. It's not just Cuba, but I think she's very much influenced by certain rituals, but also, how she says, is by the landscape and the countryside. And she's an artist who worked, she had one could say process work. She wouldn't describe it performative. She would talk about sculpture, but she kind of put her own body in the landscape, in the nature. And from my perspective, it's just a brilliant kind of, in a way, a contrast to big landscape artists like Robert Smithson, who did this enormous works. And she was always quite modest and subtle, but extremely powerful. And so we're presenting her work. It's a retrospective, and she died 85. We're showing a whole retrospective of her works, from her early performative works to the kind of silhouette works to her later drawings and sculpture works, and part of her archive. So they're going to be really exciting. And the reason why she's just an important artist for me, mainly in two perspectives. On the one hand, the feminist, kind of in the kind of feminist context, how she deals with her own body, but also how she puts her own body, takes her own body out of it. But also especially how she criticizes the feminists in this way, of saying it's a wide movement and it doesn't really integrate kind of the colored and black people. And so it's very critical, even if she was part of it, which I think is an important position. And then the other aspect, which I mentioned already, that she, as a land art artist, she approached it very different. She really worked with nature. It's a bit like using the forms of nature, and I think it's a very important approach to say being subtle and trying to merge body and nature, and realizing that actually a very subtle gesture can have an enormous impact and can be hugely powerful.